Hey everybody, it's hwsteele here. In this video, I want to talk to you about something specific and then give you maybe an example or two here in the Bible about this something specific. Now, the something specific is understanding things. Now, here's what I mean by that. If you want to understand something, you need to understand that you have to understand it before you can understand it, which is complete nonsense if you think about it, right? Well, the truth is, it's not actual nonsense. Back in the old days, by that I mean thousands of years ago, and probably nowadays too, if you're a conspiracy theorist and think there's still mystery schools, because that's what I'm talking about, available to certain people. Basically, what these Chaldeans and mystery school type-ish folks did was they were taught, after they proved themselves worthy, they were taught how to decipher hidden meanings of things, okay? They weren't actually taught necessarily what the hidden meanings were. They were just taught how to decipher them. They were taught the importance of many different areas of life and philosophies. And after they learned those areas and those sciences, they were considered, they would be able to have within themselves the knowledge they needed to, when reading sacred texts, they could decipher the hidden messages in there. Now, the thing is, the messages weren't really necessarily hidden. It's just that if you didn't know that there was other information presented to you right out in the open, in allegorical or other forms, you wouldn't know that there's something there for you to understand besides whatever the surface story was. So my point is, you need to learn certain subject matters and know them pretty decently before you're going to be able to really dig into things like W.D. Gann's books to learn about the trading, or the Bible to learn about trading, or even Shakespeare's works of art, his written works of art. All are, they have this underlying stuff, and there's a lot of this stuff out there. And if you aren't schooled in these so-called sciences, you're not going to understand that it's just literally sitting right in front of you. This second layer, this hidden layer that's just right there. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. Here in the Bible, this is, pretty sure it's the King James Version, the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 10. There's a pretty famous verse there because it gives us right here. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Okay. Now, if you read this on the surface level, you're going, wow, there was a lot of ministering angels, or whatever these were, in front of probably God, right? I think that's what he was trying to talk about. So that's the surface level. But if you look at it, if you look closely, you realize there's a mathematical something happening here being presented to you. And this isn't really too hard to figure out, because most people, at least now, in our current educational form of being, most people know mathematics well enough to realize that 1,000 thousands is 1,000 squared, and 10,000 times 10,000 is 10,000 squared. In other words, both of these numbers, 1,000 and 10,000, excuse me, are being squared or multiplied by themselves. And that's a very, very important concept to understand and to keep into mind. Basically, anytime you see a number in the Bible, in Gann's stuff, anytime you're trying to decipher the possibility of there being a hidden meaning, you should multiply that number by itself to see what you get, and find the square root of that number to see what you get, because there's very frequently a number that's derived from either squaring or finding the square root that is used to indicate the relationship between something. Now, the number 10,000, even the number 1,000, but specifically 10,000, is actually a factor, and a factor is a part of a multiplication or division problem, essentially. 10,000, the number 10,000 is a factor in the mathematical problem or equation that relates the Earth to the moon. And most people don't realize that. Even most people in the GAN study area, who are supposed to be experts and all that, don't realize that 1,000 and 10,000, those numbers, even 100,000, 100 million, whatever, those numbers are a direct reference to the Earth and moon relationship. Okay, now you might ask, how is that possible? And the answer is, we'll look at it mathematically. It's right out in the open if you know that it's right out in the open. So the number 10,000, of course, 1,000 squared, let's do this, 1,000 squared is 1,000,000. And then 10,000 squared is, of course, 100 million. So that's the squaring of it. And then 1,000, the square root of 1,000 is 31.62. And 10,000, the square root of that is, of course, 100. So these are steps that you would take just automatically with any number. But for people who understand a little bit more, because they understand the subject of astronomy or numerology or astrology and things of that nature, they realize that there's other ways to manipulate these numbers to find possibilities. And if we take the number 10,000 right here and divide it by the orbital period of the Earth in days, we get 27.38 or 3785, as you can see. And now here's something very interesting. That's the orbital period of the moon in days. So 10,000 is a factor to either the orbital period of the moon or the orbital period of the Earth. You multiply you divide 10,000 by either one of those numbers, and you're going to get the other number. So 10,000 is a factor that's used for these numbers specifically. It indicates the relationship of the orbital period of the Earth in days and the orbital period of the moon in days. And of course, if we use 1,000, it's just going to be 1/10 of that divided by 365.25 is 2.37. So it's 1/10, or 10 times. So that's another concept that's shown in the Bible repeatedly and other works also. So these are things you need to keep in mind. It's essentially what you're being shown here that I'm going to point out is, number one, the concept of squaring. So we want to square and find the square root of numbers to see if they're important. The next concept that's being shown is it talks about 1,000, and then it talks about 10,000. And that's essentially floating the decimal, right? 1,000 is the same as 10,000. The only difference is the decimal point is one place moved over. So these two concepts are important to understand and use to test what's there. The other concept is knowing the orbital period of the Earth and the moon. Excuse me, I apologize. Knowing those two orbital periods would allow you to test them out mathematically with the numbers, and you find that there's a relationship between these two. So you know that when you see these numbers, you understand that that relationship is being represented in some way. And another example that I can give you really quickly, back in the 5th chapter of Daniel, I think in the 4th verse, yeah, here. It said they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. Now, if you didn't understand rulerships in astrology, you wouldn't understand that they literally just said the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Or did they leave Mercury out? Possibility. Anyway, my point is, if you don't know this stuff already, you're not going to be able to catch it. You understand what I'm saying? So learning this stuff is multifaceted. The people who want to learn the secrets, the end game, are completely missing the point where you have to have the knowledge before that. You have to put the work in to get the understanding of these subject matters like astrology and astronomy and numerology and mathematics and things of that nature, and know all that information so that when you're reading these important books, or nowadays even watching movies or television or whatever, you can see these references right out in front of you and you can begin to learn to interpret them. And those are the steps you have to take. You have to learn the subject matter first so that you can start to notice things that you never would have noticed before. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of the importance of learning subjects, because once you understand things, then you can start to see the importance of them. Also, to give you an indication of some of the things you can start to do. Start to square numbers, find the square roots of numbers, multiply numbers or divide numbers by other important numbers, for instance, time periods, to find yourself some time factors. Anyway, I will talk to you tomorrow in the next video I do about chart reading, where I talk about price levels and momentum. So until then,